Because again, at the end of the day, we can talk about the run game all we want, but it's just, is the line going to play well or not? There's no need to get too technical on that. Is the offensive line going to play well or not? That's the question. Here's the really intriguing matchup for me, because this is the good on good matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always felt, Vince, a lot of times whoever wins the good on good matchup is who's going to win the game.
Sure.
A lot of times. Or not so much win the game, but win this particular battle between look, Wisconsin beat Notre Dame's offense last week, but Notre Dame still won the game, right? Because Notre Dame's defense beat Wisconsin's offense even worse than what Wisconsin's offense did to Notre Dame.
Right, and you can't expect that every week, but it was beautiful to see.
So you look at this matchup right here. This is the good on good matchup. Now, Notre Dame's numbers the last couple weeks have taken a little bit of a hit because of the offensive line issues. Now, Cincinnati is not a team that gets a lot of pressure on the quarterback, but that hasn't really mattered. Teams that aren't necessarily – Wisconsin's not a team that necessarily puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and they were able to still get pressure on the quarterback. They have a great individual pass rusher in Myjai Sanders, and Notre Dame's pass offense has been very inefficient the last 2 weeks because what teams are doing is they're saying, hey, we're going to come up, we're going to be aggressive, we're going to take away your quick game, we're going to try to take away some of your perimeter screens and your RPOs because we don't think you can protect long enough to go down the field. The danger against Cincinnati, Vince, is they don't have to alter what they do to get into that look. That's just what they do. And so you're going to see Kevin Austin against Ahmed Gardner. That's good on good. You're going to see the Notre Dame offensive tackles against Myjai Sanders. That's a concerning matchup for me. This is the matchup where this is where Cincinnati's kind of made their living. And, you watch the Indiana game, they created a lot of inefficiency for Indiana. Indiana had a lot of incompletions that kind of got them in some bad spots in that game. But Indiana also made some big plays. The problem is when you break down that game, why some of that stuff maybe doesn't transfer as well as you'd like it to is because Cincinnati, a lot of the big plays Cincinnati made in the past game was Michael Penix getting out of the pocket and making plays on the move. But at the same time, I don't think Michael Penix is as good as Jack Cohn when it comes to throwing from the pocket if Jack Cohn is right. And ultimately, Vince, at the end of the day, if Jack Cohn plays this weekend, he's going to have to be that guy. He's going to have to be the guy he was in the first two games where he was getting the ball, making quick reads, getting the ball out quickly, going through your progressions, finding that second, third guy. I also am really curious to see, okay, if Jack Cohn can't go, can Drew Pine against a completely different type of defense than the one he faced last week from a pass defense standpoint? How is he going to handle the stuff that Cincinnati's going to throw at him?
Yeah.
Because you got to throw – look, here's the deal. Say this before you jump in because this is the point that I wanted to make about Drew Pine. The best way to beat Cincinnati is to exactly what Georgia did. And when they've gotten beaten in the past, when Central Florida, when UCF's moved the ball on them in the past, it's throwing the ball downfield. Notre Dame did that really well the first two games. Last two games, not so much. Partly because of the quarterback, partly because of drops. The downfield passing game has not been good. That has to be on point. And that's the one thing we still don't know about Drew Pine from Saturday's game is can Drew beat you throwing the ball down the field?
Right, because he didn't have to. Yeah, he didn't have to. And D-Rock actually brings up the point that I was going to make, so I'm going to throw up his comment. He says, since these DBs are very aggressive, our receivers must be physical. He's exactly right. They will come up and they will press you, and they will get you off route right away. So the receivers need to be able to get off press, and they can't get pushed out of bounds when they're going deep. You can't do that. And so a lot of this is going to be on the wide receiving core. Can they get off that press? Can they be physical with the defensive backs? Because you're playing into Cincinnati's hands in that you don't do well with physical DBs.
Right.
Because that's what they do. That's
their
thing.
Thing is they're going to try to throw off the timing of your pass games, and that's something that Notre Dame's receivers have struggled with these first couple games. They just have. And if they're look, here's the deal. It's as simple as this. If they're able to get free releases, they have the speed to win because Cincinnati does. Ahmad Gardner's an example. He's got good speed. He's not a burner. We saw that against Georgia last year. When Georgia gave JT Daniels time, they smoked them. I mean, they held Georgia to like 46 rushing yards, but they threw for over 400 yards, which is why Georgia won that game. That's what Notre Dame is going to have to do. And you know, that's going to be the key to this game, Vince.
Sure.
That's going to be the key. So
yeah. Yep.
Now go ahead.
No, I was just going to say this matchup for me is where this game is going to be won or lost. Notre Dame can win the game if they still have a subpar run game. I mean, I feel like that's a place where they can take advantage, but if they don't, they can still win the game, right? But it's this matchup.
Right.
This matchup right here that if they fail at this matchup and the run game matchup, it's over. I mean, there's just you can't rely on your defense to outscore the opposition's offense all the time. I mean, I just don't see that happening. And Cincinnati's offense is better than the offense that they just faced. So they have to win one of these.
Yeah, they have to play well. And it's not even about failing. Like they can't even be average. They have to be good in the pass game. Now, here's the hope is, okay, because we're sounding kind of doom and gloom so far. The hope is where I really like some of these matchups are taking advantage of Cincinnati's aggressiveness outside and run them off at times.
Right.
And create some levels. I mean, Georgia had some success with that. Yeah, get their linebackers and safeties in their nickel chasing Avery Davis across the field. Move Kevin Austin around and see what they're going to do. Okay, if they're going to put Ahmed, I don't think they haven't shown this. They're not going to put if you go to a 3 receiver set and all of a sudden you line up and you've got Braden Lindsey to the backside or Michael Mayer to the backside, and you've got Kevin Austin as the number 2 player to the field. They're not going to put Ahmed Gardner over there on him. At least they haven't shown it. And if they do, great. Then now you can do some things backside. I want to see Notre Dame get creative with just how they line up in this game. I think it would be unwise to just sit there and say, hey, Kevin Austin, you of 4 career games really, played games, we're just going to let you go mano a mano against Ahmed Gardner all game.
And I think
even though you couldn't beat Purdue's backup cornerback because his technique's not there, his experience isn't there. Can he win some battles? Yes, but to me, he is your best receiver, and you need to go back to in my opinion, to saying, hey, we need to be smart enough to say, hey, look, he's got to do battle against Ahmed Gardner, but we're also going to take advantage of his size and skill set, and we're going to move him around, put him in the slot, put him here, put them there, and try to get him in some isolations where he can match, and then make Cincinnati defend that. And you know, so those are going to be important things. We did have a couple of super chats here, Vince, that I wanted to get to from.
Yeah, please do.
From Martin, who is our usher friend at Notre Dame. Continue from last chat. I have 2 seats in front row with recruits with your name on them. God bless and go Irish. I would love to, Martin, but Vince is going to be in the press box this week. And I have 2 tickets to the game. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to go, though, because my wife is sick. And so I may have to kind of be home with her this weekend, taking care of her. Depends on how she's feeling these next couple of days. But yeah, I appreciate the super chat very much. And then Martin had another one.
His another one.
Sorry you didn't get my last chat. We got it, buddy. I just was in the middle of one of my rants and I just couldn't stop talking. So I appreciate that. And I did not miss it. He says, what about Lugg at left tackle and Baker tight end help at right tackle? Come down and wish the players and coaches good luck at pregame in my section with recruits. By the way, my super chats go up $10 after each win. Now I'm really rooting for Notre Dame to win this weekend, Martin, because I appreciate that very much.
No, that's awesome, Martin. Thank you.
But regarding the reason I wanted to bring up those super chats now is because I think this last one especially brings up a topic of conversation. They're not going to move Josh Lugg to left tackle, whether we think they should or not. I think there's merit to it, but they're not going to do that. Notre Dame has shown under Jeff Quinn that they're just going to kind of plug in the next guy. They're not really fans of moving people around. It's what we saw last year, at least not starters. What we saw last year when Jarrett Patterson and Zeke Correll got hurt, they simply took a backup from another position and moved him inside, as opposed to maybe moving Robert Hainsey inside, which I still feel, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers clearly saw enough of Robert Hainsey to move him inside to center. I understand it's a different situation. Tampa Bay drafted him. They had all offseason to develop him there. I'm just making the point that they saw those skills. I saw those skills. Notre Dame saw those skills. They just were unwilling to make that move. Sometimes you have to be willing to shake things up, especially when your line's playing poorly. Like last year, I understood it because your line was playing so well. Do I really want to shake up moving Hainsey or moving Banks or moving Kramer or whatever else. Like, let's just move one guy and then hopefully we can keep going. So for me, I think that I would have moved Lugg to left tackle. I would move Lugg to left tackle. But the reality is, Vince, they're not going to do that. And if they were going to do that, they would have already done it.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that. They're just going to hope that they get Michael Carmody back. And between him, Joe Walton, Tosh Baker, it's kind of like, let's roll the dice and see who can block this week. And the unfortunate thing is you could say, well, you could help out with them. But a lot of the times when the tackles are getting beat, they're getting beat inside. There's nothing the tight end can do about that.
Correct.
I think what they do need to do, however, is I do think they need to start being smart about sliding the protection to the left side more. That is an adjustment that look, here's the deal, Vince. One of the most frustrating things I ever see when I'm watching teams play, and this is true at this level, it's true of Division III, it's true of high school, it's true of every level of football that I watch. One of the most annoying things in the world to me are coaches who just keep struggling with the same thing and just say, hey, look, we'll eventually get it right. The fact is you keep getting beat with the same stuff over and over and over again. Corner fires, double moves on the outside, and guys just lining up out wide and slanting inside. There's clearly something wrong there. So you keep running the same protections over and over and over again, hoping that they finally figure it out. Instead of saying, hey, look, we're not figuring it out. We have pretty good backs in pass pro. So let's slide to the backside and we'll have our back step up and take any front side pressure. And if we need to bring a tight end in, we can bring the tight end and help him out on the right side. So slide to the left side, give help to the right side, I think would be the way to go as far as one of the protection checks. You can't just run one protection the whole game.
Well, right. But I think, isn't that the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over 100%. And over and expecting a different result, right? I mean, it's one of the things we hear all the time in education. So you're absolutely right. They need to mix it up because what they're doing now is clearly not working. And again, I don't blame the players. And, again, substituting the players, I don't know that that's going to necessarily do much for you. I still think, and I will say this, when Blake Fisher gets back, I'd love to see him at left, Tosh at right, and then bump Lugg into guard. They're not going to do that either.
I would flip him. I still think Tosh is the best left tackle when he's right. He's right. That's the thing, when he's right. But the point being, they're not coaching Tosh up the way they need to. He's the same guy he was in the first time he stepped on the field.
Absolutely.
And I want to kind of grab this too from Joel Easton. He says, can you clarify why they can't or won't? I never said they can't. They won't make a change like that. A different podcast in a rather whiny and petulant tone said something similar. They just can't, but refuse to say why. I don't know who that is. I don't know what you're talking about.
But I love it.
I think it's hilarious.
Sorry, I love it.
It's not that they can't. They won't. They certainly can. Why can't they?
Yeah, they can do anything they want.
Yes. I mean, and I think it would make sense. I mean, we've seen teams do this. We've seen Notre Dame do this in 2014. Nick Martin hurt his hand and the line wasn't playing well. So they flipped Steve Elmer and Christian Lombard. They had, remember that year they started, we talked about this recently. They had Elmer playing tackle that year. They had Christian Lombard at guard. They had Nick Martin at center, and they had like Connor Hanratty, and I think it was Matt Hegarty were playing guard, and the line stunk early in the year. And then they just kind of said, okay. And part of it was because they had like Lombard was hurt, Martin was hurt in the spring, so they couldn't get that lineup playing together. And so after a quarter of the season was over, he said, okay, this isn't working. So he flipped Elmer and Lombard, put Elmer at right guard where he was more comfortable, put Lombard at right tackle where he started in 2012, slid Nick Martin out to guard because his hand was busted up, and they put Matt Hegarty at center. And for the rest of the year, the Notre Dame offensive line played pretty well. Now, The rest of the team didn't play real well, but the offensive line played better. You see teams do this all the time, and it's about getting your best five on the field and getting them in a position where your line can play the best together. This current Notre Dame staff is very reluctant to do that because they have this. What I was told about the Hainsey thing, for example, Hainsey, I was told, went to Notre Dame and said, "Hey, I can handle center. Let me move to center." And the thought behind it was, and I somewhat understand it to a degree. I understood it when Carell was there. Still, hey, look, Zeke's ready. We're good. But when he went down, and Kramer was down, it was like, look, Lugg's your next best lineman, but Lugg's not a center. And so their thought was, yeah, Luggs may not play great, but we got 4 other guys that can play well. It just was a lack of creativity, a lack of outside the box thinking, and a lack of guts, to be honest with you, to say, hey, look, this could end up not being good, but have the conviction of your, have the conviction of will to say, hey, we're going to do this because this is the best way to do it. We're going to not stop asking these young guys to go out there and keep getting beat snap after snap and be like, well, we're down to our 3rd left tackle. Okay, then put freaking Josh Lugg at left tackle.
Right.
I mean, do something different. Don't keep whining about, well, we're trying, blah, 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 blah. And no, you're not, because you keep throwing the same dudes out there and they keep getting beat with the same exact things. And then, that's on you. Right. So put Lugg out there at left tackle if you want to. It's not about they can't, they won't. They can. They certainly can. And I don't think Josh Lugg is a natural left tackle. I don't think he'd be a great left tackle. I think he'd be better than what they have out there right now. So, Vince, that's kind of where I'm at. Now, I would not say that if they had a better line coach, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Because I think a better line coach would have Tosh Baker playing better, I should say. So, anyway, that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah,
Vince. It's not that they
just
can't,
substituting players isn't necessarily going to fix this problem, because it's going to be the same guys that are being coached by the same guy, and they're going to still have the same fundamental issues. And so, just plugging guys in that we haven't seen isn't necessarily going to solve the problem,
or moving guys around necessarily.
Right. I think that's kind of my
correct. The root problem still exists.
Right.
There's a communication problem.
Right.
There's a technique problem. There's the scheme isn't working, essentially, and they're refusing to change it. So hopefully they do this week, and I think that they should, because Cincinnati's a team that does some interesting things over and over. Sorry, I just read somebody said over and over. Cincinnati does a lot of interesting things from snap to snap, double inside crash, line twists,
right?
Stuff that's given Notre Dame a lot of problems. Slants with double stunts.
They use their athleticism. Yeah. I mean, they do what Notre Dame does on defense, not surprisingly, because they had the same defensive coordinator. But they do the same. They use their athleticism to their advantage. I mean, and that's what they're going to continue to do. And that has caused problems for this offensive line in the first 4 games. And so you just got to spend the next 4 or 5 days praying that Notre Dame kind of gets their stuff together on the offensive line and they can slow up this defense a little bit.
Right. So we talk about the pass game. Here's some things I want to see in the pass game this week too, Vince, is I want to see Notre Dame trying to get some cheap yards. And this goes back to a point you brought up with the screen game.
Yeah.
I think that I would run they have a screen that they run. We've only seen it once this year. They ran it against Florida State. I don't think we've seen it since. And I think it would have hit either side, but I think it's a really good screen to execute against a team like Cincinnati. They're going to run a bubble screen to the back to the field, and they run a tunnel screen backside. And they ran it against Florida State. They hit Chris Tyree. It's the proper read to hit Chris Tyree. Yes, they could have had Kevin Austin to the boundary, but a quarterback can't anticipate that this isn't going to happen and this will. He has to read it out. His read was there. Pre-snap read should have told him to go over here.
And screens are pre-snap reads, not in the middle of place.
Correct.
Reads, just so everybody understands
that kind of screen especially.
Right.
Now, if you're going to run a screen and with a kind of a fake behind it, that obviously you would read out. But most screens, to your point, Vince is absolutely right. You're predetermining where you're going to go pre-snap. And so I like that. I like that call. I think they could do some of that. I like they need to do some double moves against it. This is the other thing that blows my mind. There's like almost no double moves. How you are not double moving press teams is beyond me. That's like the thing they're most vulnerable to is stutters and goes and slant and goes and faking it out and nodding back inside. Things that we've seen Notre Dame do in the past is under Tommy Rees. They need to do that stuff this week against Cincinnati. Now, my hope is that Cincinnati is naturally a press team, that Notre Dame will be prepared for that. I feel as if in the last couple of weeks, Notre Dame didn't see Wisconsin playing a lot of press. They didn't see Purdue playing a lot of press. So they're like, well, they're not going to press us. They are, because they watched the first 2 games, and they were unprepared for that aggressive coverage. They're not going to be unprepared for that against Cincinnati, because that's what Cincinnati does. So they need to have some post-snap switch concepts, in my opinion, are great with motion. So like you have, Kevin Austin inside and Braden Lindsey outside. You bring him in on a motion, you stack them, and then you switch them at the snap. and that allows them to get free, right? It allows them to get a step.
Correct.
It allows them to get Cincinnati's DBs in chase mode. If you can get them in chase mode, that's where you can have some success. But that takes pre-snap creativity and post-snap creativity, and not creativity in like a fake, but just, hey, look, we're going to run this concept. We're going to do a little bit of a different wrinkle this week to that in order to get our guys free. So I think those are things that we need to see this week, Vince, on top of screens, jets, reverses, things like that, because the reality is if you run a reverse against Cincinnati, there's a chance they sniff it out and tackle you for 8-yard loss.
Sure.
But there's also a chance that happens every single time you drop back to pass. I mean, right?
Well, yeah, we talked about having to get horizontal against Wisconsin because their linebackers aren't great in space. Yeah. Well, that's not really the case against Cincinnati. Their linebackers are pretty good in space. So,
but do
you need to do that? Yes,
right,
I still think you need to do that.
Correct, because they're a man team.
Right.
Man teams can be vulnerable to say, hey, we're going to run off. That cornerback has no idea that you're running reverse.
Exactly.
And so,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's where you can take the aggressiveness of Cincinnati and use that against
exactly.
That's the key here.
And then you have to have stuff off of that. Okay, we're gonna do this reverse. We think we can get them, out of this look, we can get them in a reduced look, and we can get them chasing, and we're going to bring a reverse around, that kind of thing. There needs to be some of that using what they do against them. That's what good play callers do. And then using your personnel effectively, using Chris Tyree effectively, using Braden Lindsey more effectively. Look, we talked about this the other day. Braden Lindsey scored 4 touchdowns in 2019. He scored on a screen, a post route, a jet sweep, and a reverse. 4 completely different ways. He's run out cuts, goes, and post this year. That's it.
Right.
That's it.
Nothing around the line of scrimmage.
Nothing. No crossings, no reverses, no jets. He's just been kind of a smoke guy that, goes in motion. They don't actually do anything with him. So to me, those are the things that we need to see from this pass offense this week from Notre Dame. Is you have to be able to move your guys around to get in matchups, because if they can get in matchups against the safeties and the nickels, if they can get Braden Lindsey matched up against the safeties and the nickels, if they can get the linebackers, Michael Mayer matched up against the safeties, the nickels, and the linebackers, if they can get the running backs, I think this should be a huge running back pass game week, Vince. A huge running. By the way, they're having a little bit of a drill at the school, so Vince will be back here very shortly. This is a big week where they can take advantage of using Michael Mayer. They can take advantage of the running backs. They can take advantage of a lot of different parts of this football team. So those are some things where I think Notre Dame can and should have some success when it comes to the pass game against Cincinnati. And it's not a thing where, look, Notre Dame's not going to go out and complete 75% of their passes, I don't think. I'm not anticipating that. They're not a super efficient pass game right now. Cincinnati creates a lot of pass game inefficiency. It's more about you've got to be able to find some ways to create big plays. And if you can get 5 or 6 big chunk plays, that's where Notre Dame is going to be able to have a level of success in this game. And